Good evening, I'm Natalie Torres-Haddad, and I'm honored to be moderating today's panel in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, sponsored by GMC in collaboration with the Youth Awards and Hispanic Heritage Foundation. I was born in El Salvador and raised in LA, and at an early age I found out that higher education was extremely important. As a first-generation college student, I have 2 degrees in finance and international business, and I found that within our communities, the lack of higher education and financial literacy limits our fundamental human rights. And so I started a nonprofit called LA's Prom Closet that gave away free prom dresses as well as workshops, and eventually started doing bilingual content to universities, high schools, and companies on financial literacy. In a few minutes, I'm going to showcase these inspiring Latino entrepreneurs, Francisco Galvez from Charro Azteca and Miguel Vidal from Valentina's TexMex barbecue. But before doing so, let's look at the new campaign by GMC in celebration and admiration and support of la Hispana cultura.
Something in the word heritage sounds like it's asking, where's the road taking you? Something in the word ancestry sounds as if you carry inside you hearts you've never known. We are a great and numerous people, like grain thrown to wind. We are scattered, like rainfall, composing our song wherever we fall to earth. If you listen, you will find us. In the forests and purple mountains like whispers. We are in cities, talking and laughing in thunderstorm voices. In the streets, shining. Painted in colors of the sun. We are here as we have always been here. We are counted by our languages, but our tongues remain uncaged, sounding our infinity of anonymous tones, like the waves of an ocean that will never come to tally. That's the dream of America, a tapestry to be woven into, a mosaic completed by each of us, piece by piece. We'll build it the way we do everything, the same way we embroider linens into fine clothing, or prepare food for strangers, hecho con amor. We'll build it beautifully. Long may we thrive.
I have Francisco Galvez here, who is the founder and family-owned, operated of Charro Azteca. It's incredible to hear your story, obviously, of what you've been doing as a Latino entrepreneur, as well as now sharing your natural business senses that you've learned through your own business, as well as through your now podcast, Charro Azteca. And also, you have a book that just recently came out, which I love the title. I mean, who can't? It's Agarra el rollo y ponte las pilas. And I think what is beautiful about it is that you're not only helping the next generation of Latinx entrepreneurs, but you're also highlighting what tools they already have and what resources they can really use as they move forward in their own businesses. We have here Miguel Vidal, who has made himself a fixture in the Austin Tex-Mex barbecue as his own Tex-Mex truck as well as a restaurant, Valentina's TexMex barbecue. He remembers what he learned as a child, seeing his father taking the time to meticulously not only create the fire, the food that comes with it, but he has also made a name for himself and this restaurant that's family owned and operated. And when you go there, this is something that people love, feeling is not just the food, but feeling that they're eating something from home. So, with that theme, Francisco, you have a long family history of Mexican cowboys in your family. Can you share with us the idea that came about when you decided to create Charro Azteca?
Yeah, so Charro Azteca's story starts with my grandfather. My grandfather's from a town called Colotlan, Jalisco, which is the mecca of piteado. So my grandpa used to embroider belts and all the charro gear. So then they moved to the neighboring state, Zacatecas, where my dad was born. And from there, they grew up on the farm, riding horses. So they didn't play soccer. Their sport was charreria. So my father grew up every single day, was practicing the sport that he loved so that he could perform on the weekends. Of course, the immigration story that we all have, of course, my mother got pregnant with me, and my father came to the U.S. To make some little money. Against my dad's will, my mom crossed the border at 7.5 months pregnant with me because my mom wanted to give me an opportunity. I was born here. For the first 5 years, my father tried to instill the tradition of charreria and it took me to Pico Rivera, to the charreadas. I learned how to ride a horse at 2 to 3 years old. Unfortunately, LA living is pretty costly. There's no backyards for us to keep our horse, so the maintaining and things like that. At 6 years old, I just remember we had to sell everything. So that was that. I grew up, and once I hit 29 years old, I had a child. Then me and my wife were expecting, and the first thought is like, what am I gonna try to pass? And at that point, it was when I decided I'm gonna dress him up a little charrito to honor my father and my grandpa, not knowing that me dressing him as a charrito, posting him online was gonna make him go viral. And then the question was, where do I get a suit like that? And boom, that is how Charro Azteca was born.
I love that. I mean, obviously you have your family incorporating what it is at their roots, right? Bringing some of that back here, and then you doing this with your own, which is incredible. And speaking with the family theme, how is it that for you, Miguel, that you've managed to, you tend to employ it with your own family, right? So you employ your cousins, your sisters, your brothers. Can you share with us what role family plays in business?
Well, I think for me, family played a huge role as far as the idea of what Valentina's was going to be to begin with. Before we get into hiring brothers and sisters, we go back to, I worked in restaurants since I was 15 years old. My first job, I used to take the bus from the south side of San Antonio to downtown to work at a place called Bambino's Pizza. First job was a dishwasher. Then I worked my way up to the restaurant and ended up becoming a manager there. But when Valentina's is kind of coming into play, I'm getting ready to think about what we're going to do here. It's always going back to like, what was I feeling at home? Like the food and the experience. Working in restaurants all the way to the age of 30, 32, right when I was going to open up Valentina's, you're taking out all those experiences that I've had, right? And trying to like, when I want to eat something, it's always about what does it bring back? Like what kind of feeling or what kind of nostalgia does it have? And I think that when you incorporate your family and your culture and everything that you've done, you're taken back to those moments and some of the most like happiest and proud moments of my life. So I want to like share that with people. As we continue to grow, my hope is that my family grows with me, and if they have to, and if they don't, then what I try to do is instill something in my family and people around me to where they can go off and do their own thing, or they can make something for themselves based on the knowledge and everything that we've come through together, you know? Mm-hmm. And I want Valentina's to put out the best food and people can feel the love, right? Because we have a saying, it's hecho con amor. We make everything with love, and we want to treat everyone like their family. But then it's a business at the same time. Yeah. So there are rules, there's regulations, there's things that people need to follow. And if people aren't following systems, whether they're family or not, there has to be consequences.
Yes.
And, you know.
Well, I love how you're saying that, because it's, I mean, what you just mentioned, it's hecho con amor, right? So your restaurant is definitely a family affair, right? To needless to say, and obviously incorporating the business. For both of you, obviously you're talking about family values and what your traditions that you're bringing home. Has it been, for either of you, a challenge, or what have you done to keep connected to your roots? And if so, was that something your parents were instilling or your community? Yeah,
for me, like the first 5 years, my father would take me on a horse. I grew up on a horse. That was every Sunday was like, let's go ride a horse, let's listen to Antonio Aguilar, La Silveria, Los Cadetes. That's the house cleaning music in the home, right? And then after that point, it was like, okay, then I go to elementary, junior high school, and now we started, okay, cool, like now what started to influence me wasn't that much of a home. I was like, okay, I'll try to rebel. Let's listen to a different kind of music, Tupac, Biggie, Metallica, whatever. Like, so I felt very like a tug of war. Like my friends are listening to this, or they're dressing that way, you know? Yeah. Like we're trying to find ourselves, paint up black nails, or dress like with Adidas or Jordans or whatever it was. And then coming back home, it was always the same thing. The constant always in my life was Antonio Aguilar or Tamborazo, the house. We're gonna drive to my tia's house or to a party, and we're listening to Antonio Aguilar. That was a constant. But if I've gone through my phases, like any of us have, and we look back like, I can't believe I wore that, I can't believe I dressed like or listened to that, but at the constant was always that. So that's what's always kept me grounded. So when my son was born, I'm like, oh cool, like that household music, the food, the wardrobe, like that is what kept me grounded, because if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have been lost way more than what I was.
Yes, I love that. You're saying the consistency, right? What keeps us grounded. And for you, how
well,
has that been?
it's very similar, and it's cool to hear that it's similar coming from a first generation Mexican American to someone like me who's been, my family's been in Texas for like 4 generations now. So when you think about, like, I think I'm Tejano to the bone, right? But it's like going out listening to rap, DJ Shadow, or like Snoop and then Deftones or whatever. But then coming home and it's Emilio Navaida and Selena and La Mafia, right? And that's what they're listening to, or Vicente Fernandez all the time.
I love it.
And it's that with that family, that's that same family roots where you're gonna come home and on Sunday you're gonna be able to get some menudo and barbacoa every time for me. And we're gonna have homemade tortillas sitting on the stovetop.
Oh, yes.
When someone gets a promotion or a new job or someone's graduating, you're gonna go over and for us, you're gonna have grilling. You're gonna have fajitas, half chickens, and a brisket going, and you're gonna have rice, beans, salsas. And it's the same stuff all the time. So that's what we're going around. And I can go get a scholarship. I got a scholarship to play soccer at St. Edward's University in Austin. So it doesn't matter where you go. You come back home, it's the same thing. I can go in and have fine dining and eat this and eat that. I come back home and it's that consistency and that food that we're having all the time. And your family kind of bringing you back down to the level again,
I love that. And Miguel, I think you're saying the spark of the consistency of food. Can you remember that aha moment or that light bulb that turned into your head and you're like, how, I need to start this restaurant? Was it that made you want to do Valentina's?
Well, we were talking before, a little bit earlier, and I was saying how when I met my wife, she was the one like, hey, you have all these ideas in your head, write it down. And so I was 25 years old and make a vision board without calling it a vision board. My wife's like, hey, write the top 3 things you want to do, put like a goal, make it a goal, and just like paste it up on that wall and look at it every day. So I had done that. And I said by the time I was 30 years old, I was going to open up my own thing. I was 32 when Valentina's finally opened. But yes, that moment was like finding what you really want to do, right? So I was like playing with this and testing this out and that out. But Valentina's initially was like a fine dine restaurant, okay, with smoke and fire added to Mexican food and barbecue. So I was gonna do stuff I grew up with in San Antonio, like buffy tacos, but with smoked brisket. Or taking smoked fish and seafood and adding that to ceviche. Or doing stuff that we had like fideo, but with like a high-end beef tenderloin instead of ground beef. So I was gonna kind of mix and match all that stuff, but it was trying too hard, It was a little bit of like too much, like just a little trying too much. I remember going home and my father just had barbecued. My dad, there was a brisket, he had made a brisket, and some of my cousins and my brothers and sisters come over, but there was a brisket. My mom made some frijoles and arroz, right? And then we had some enchiladas, some aguacate just smashed with a little bit of salt and lime, and salsa and tortillas, and my dad made some ribs too or something, So it's just kind of boom, laid out, and I'm eating. I put a slice of brisket and a tortilla, a little aguacate and some salsa. Take a bite, just look around, I'm like, this is what it needs to be. And this is the representation that Valentina, so this restaurant we're going to do has to be. It has to be, what are we doing at home? Because I also play semi-pro soccer, right? And that moment right there, it reminded me of like being in Laredo and then going to a friend's house there. And it's the same thing. We were in El Paso, we go and we're eating at someone's house. It's the same thing, right? But you can't get this stuff in any restaurant. What the Hispanic culture, what the Mexican Americans, Latinos were doing in the backyard at home, it's not what you're getting on the border or Chuy's or whatever Mexican restaurant you go to. And that's not Tex-Mex. For me, right? That's not that mashup of that culture that's been there for 2, 3, 4 generations, and it's not a proper representation.
And that's so important, a representation, especially during Hispanic Heritage Month. And I think you just hit that right to the core when you're saying it's what makes you feel like that home. And maybe somebody that's watching thinking, oh my gosh, I need to make that plate and provide that in a restaurant. I think it's a good way to think back where you started from. And for you, Francisco, obviously you've elevated in different fields and different platforms, not only from creating, Charro Azteca, which is unmatched in the U.S., but, you started the podcast as well as the book. How have you not only found your voice and knowing that it was going to sell quickly as well with your book, but also how is it that you managed to pivot into all these different platforms?
I'm going to piggyback off Miguel because I got to give a lot of credit to my wife because I think I chose correctly. And every single time that the business, as an entrepreneur, as a dreamer as I am, and every entrepreneur has, and we were talking about this, is we shoot from the hip. We're too risky sometimes. We're like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And eventually the person that has always kept me grounded, and when I didn't believe in myself, the person that literally said, you can do it, or do the vision board, come on, go for it, I believe in you, has been my wife. Sometimes she believed in me more than I believed in myself. So that's how it started with the birth of my firstborn. And then she's like, come on, let's do it. And then the business succeeded. And then I was doubting myself in the podcast. And then like, come on, you have the voice. And as Miguel was talking, I'm like, what was the secret right here? And I'm like, damn, it's like...
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, for you, it's your wife. For me, it's my wife. Maybe not only my wife or your wife, too. But, like, I think that when you're an entrepreneur, you might sometimes, especially if you're coming from, Mexican-American culture, Latin American culture, whatever it is, and you might feel alone sometimes. Mm-hmm. You need somebody because you can't do it by yourself. Right? That's the main thing. You can't do this job by yourself. You can be an entrepreneur, mm-hmm. but once you get rolling, you need that support system. That's the biggest thing. And it's to believe in a support system because you do have those moments of doubts. You do have those moments, am I good enough? Are people going to, like I can exude so much confidence when I was opening the restaurant. And really, I going back behind, I'm about to throw up and be like, shit.
Yes.
Are these people going to really like my food right now?
Yeah.
And we were talking about the journey of the daily journey of an entrepreneur. We wake up really early, right? And we're gonna wake up at 5 a.m. to tackle the day, and we're motivated, right? Motivation levels at 100. Yeah. Then at 9 a.m. the first fire comes that we have to go like water down. Yeah. So now our motivation's like, man, what happened here? And then at 11, I'm like, all right, cool, we're still good.
You're good because you conquered that one.
First and then we have lunch, and I'm like, all right, cool. The next half of the day, I'm motivated again, and then the first thing at 2 p.m. it's like another roller coaster, another bigger fire. So it's just a daily roller coaster ride. And if it wasn't for the woman that we chose, or I feel that I chose to, like, I would have gone mentally insane. Because entrepreneurship is not an easy job. I know it's like the social media and online, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. But until I meet someone like Miguel, and like, you earned your stars and stripes. And I could talk to him and I'm like, yeah, me and him, like, we earned our stars and stripes. But then I hear someone that's like, oh, how long you been an entrepreneur for 2 months? I'm like, you know what? How cute. You're in the honeymoon stage. Just wait 5, 6, 7 years until of not getting paid anything, right?
I mean, that's another thing, right? Too, right? Not getting paid anything. But the biggest thing, if you're gonna start something, you have to believe in it 100%. I just had a talk with someone about this. He was like, oh, I want to do what you're doing, or do what's like, well, that's awesome. You get to do what you're doing, right? I'm like, look. He says, I want to get to that point. I said, well, the biggest thing right now, you're not going to want to hear it. But it's like, you need to drop what you're doing and not worry about the money. You can't. Damn. Even though entrepreneur, you want to make money, right? But you can't worry about it because it's not going to be there sometimes. And you have to understand that you're going to go in 1,000%. And you might be on the verge of failing, but before you're going to hit it really big and be really successful.
Wow, that reminds me of a story like with 3 feet, like almost hitting 3 feet from gold. And that's always been my fear of like, man, what if I stop here? And that's a big important lesson. Like if you really want to succeed, you gotta at least minimum 2 years without making a penny in your business. And I think right now everybody wants like the microwave Maruchan of business, right? How can I get from here to here like in 3 minutes?
Right.
Where a pozole, a good barbecue, how long does it take?
Right.
Like it
Yeah,
takes
we're going
time.
all day. Yeah.
All day. And that's the thing that I don't think people have the patience. And I have a saying that's like, you have to have some urgent patience, but tampoco like, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
It's the I like how you're saying it. It's consistency. It takes time, and it's kind of you have to plan for those unexpected.
I think the word is
times when it can pay.
commitment.
And
Yeah.
commitment.
I don't think people
yes.
have commitment. I
Absolutely.
think people could already see like, how can I get out? I
Right.
don't think there's commitment in business or in marriage or
Well,
in
then
school.
also you're gonna
Like,
commit like, okay, so you're gonna the shortcuts to be able to make that quick.
people are already going in knowing that there's a way out.
Yeah.
So speaking in commitment, because a lot of people are watching this, whether they're starting their business or thinking of starting a business, and thanking our spouses for the work and the partners that you bring into your business. What is it that you, for either one of you, you wish you would have known before getting into business? Because maybe it's the challenges or the tricks or something that you would have liked to have been warned. If there's anything that comes to mind.
I wish I would have done more research on like I guess the tax portion and knowing the ins and outs of that, on how am I gonna every little city tax and how to budget and manage that portion, that more than anything. You go in and making this money. I had someone in place for that, right? But then you still have to manage them and know that they're doing the right thing. We missed this one little thing on the city tax in the very beginning and added up over a year and turned into like $100,000.
Wow.
Luckily, we have been bringing in so much cash flow in the moments where we could kind of take care of it, but that was a fortunate thing for us. Not everyone has that fortunate moment like that to be able to handle it, and otherwise you're all the hard work you did by not doing the whole complete proper research and getting things right, now you're done.
It's missing that one little step, right? The
you're
foundation
done.
And I think
behind it.
I would, that same question, I agree with Miguel, because there's the romantic side of entrepreneurship, but then there's the financial literacy part of it that a lot of people don't understand. And I think that it's kind of like the story that we get. It's really cool to be a millionaire, but then that millionaire also has millionaire problems, which is the financial problems. More money, more problems, we heard that saying. And we don't have that education. No one taught me that. Like you had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, or like, I see people jumping into like small little food trucks or taco trucks or small restaurants, whatever it is now. But they're not even concerned of looking at cost of goods, right? Cost of and a P&L statement or knowing any of that stuff. Yeah. They're gonna make something like, okay, we're gonna charge $6 for this. Well, why? You should be charging actually $7.50, $8.50 because of this reason, this reason, and this reason, right? You're breaking down that business into thirds with your food costs, and then how much are you gonna pay your employees, and then you have your rent. Like there's different categories to really. You look at a restaurant, you have like a 15%, 20% window to make any money. And if you're not doing it right, that's gonna go into 10 to 5. Then you're negative. Then you're in the red right away because you're not paying attention to that.
Financial literacy.
This is giving a lot of these people that are watching is food for thought, right? Kind of like the things that maybe your strengths, you're saying, or some of your weaknesses, find someone that can help you along with that. And I know we're getting a lot of questions from some of these students, and one of the questions that we saw is that many of them might be feeling the fear, or today's society maybe it's a little cynical about what the market should look like, and maybe they want to start a business. What type of advice would you give to them to hopefully move forward with their dreams? How about we start with you, Francisco?
The biggest advice I can give is how you see the world. And I don't think the world, it is what it is, but it all depends on how you see it. And what I mean, you could see it in a positive or you could see it in a negative. I always saw the opportunity that my mom took the risk of her life and my life at 7 months to cross the border through a cerro, for me to have that opportunity. It could be different for yours, but the immigrant story is similar in a lot of ways. And I see it in the positive way. You know what? I was born in the greatest country on earth. That's the biggest opportunity I have. And that's how I saw it. If you see it that there's a lot of restraints, a lot of obstacles, cool. Then that's just another obstacle that I have to jump over, go under, go sideways, go through. I don't really care. At least I'm playing in the game. And I think we all have the same opportunity. Yes, some of us are born with a silver spoon. I wasn't. I was born with homemade tortillas, charro beans, nopales, and that taste. I prefer it that way. The greatest gift that I told my father was that he gave me the gift of being poor, because at that point everything has been a stepping stone. I know that I'm working for that, and I think a lot of people now, millennials, including myself, have been entitled with Wi-Fi, microwaves, things like that, even a flushing toilet where my dad had to go to the back over there with Cerro, in the middle of the night. And I think visiting Mexico, visiting third world countries, visiting just puts a lot of perspective. And that's one of the main goals to my son, that he's a second generation, but making sure that he knows that he has it good. Mm-hmm. Just knowing that. And because there's a story of two twins that were born from very abusive parents, and they separate them very early in life. And one twin becomes a very successful business owner, and the other twin turns into a drug addict, goes to jail. And they ask why? They were both abused when they were young. And they asked the one that was in jail, why did you turn out the way you turned out? And they're like, well, because look at my parents. I had no choice. And then they asked the successful twins, how did you become a very successful entrepreneur? It's look, I had no choice. Look at how my parents were. So it's the same experience. It's the same experience. It's just you get to decide how you look at it.
The perspective.
Your perception of it.
And that's the crazy thing that I saw. Is and one time my dad told me a crazy story. It's look, a tree has its full potential to become a tree. An animal will become to its full potential that kind of an animal. But a human has the power of choice. And we're the only species in the world, he said, that we decide not to go to our full potential. We get to decide to hold back our potential. And it's wisdom from old Mexican proverb, Charro.
It's true. It's the reminder we need to hear. We're watching, those that are watching this are thinking that we have these potentials, right? We have how we see the perspective of it, right? And for you, is there something that, someone's watching feeling that?
Well, I mean, just going back and looking at my grandmother, right? She was a migrant farmer. We grew up in Eagle Pass, born in Eagle Pass, had 5 sisters and a brother. They would travel from South Texas all the way to Michigan, picking cotton and grapes from 1930 something. So she met my grandfather. My grandfather was World War II. He fought in France, Normandy, came back. My dad was a Marine. My dad got my mom pregnant. She was 17 years old. They went to Jefferson High School in San Antonio. My mom dropped out, had a kid. My grandfather says, you got yourself into it, get yourself out. So he joins the Marine Corps. But I watched my parents and my grandmother, my grandparents work hard. Every day. They come in, work, go home, work. So they're pushing me to you need to go to college, go do this and that, right? But the inspiration, right, is coming back to seeing them. No matter what they did, they came back and worked and took care of their stuff and kept that consistent, let's just do this is what we have to do. So for me to push forward and to be an entrepreneur was to see that and be I see this and I see their dreams and they're kind of stopping just short because they have ideas, but they feel they have these roadblocks in the way because they're seeing it through this perspective of this is what we are. What else can we do? Yeah. Right? Hey, at least I'm playing in the game. I'm going to have this idea. I'm going to be told no. You know what? I'm going to navigate this way then.
Correct.
Oh, here's a bridge and here's a block. Let me navigate this way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to find a way. It doesn't matter the color of my skin, my last name, where I'm at. You know what? Then screw you. I'm going to try it over here.
Yeah. And it's that. It's being able to figure out where Where you might fail, but at least you tried it, right? And that's the key.
And then with you, and like you said, the word commitment comes up, right? So it's like, if whatever you're doing, if you're doing it with 100% right here, and you're going to do everything for the right reason, you're not trying to scam this person or that person to get what you want. You're not trying to like, well, we save money if we do it this way. Hey, yeah, if you save money, but it's the right way to save money, and do it, if you're doing everything for the right reasons and with the right intentions, then you'll be able to meet people that will support you. You'll be able to have people that have your back, and people are going to see that. The world's going to see that, and they're going to take that on no matter where you're from.
I love that. And I know a lot of students have this question because either they're finishing their college career or ready to start their career. One of the questions was, what did your careers help you to get to this point? Obviously, many of you started working different capacities before starting your business.
Yeah, we had past lives, right? Where we weren't born entrepreneurs. And I started, my first job was in a furniture store. Like, I just want to get a job. And the first thing I saw is like, man, I worked 65 hours this week and I only got $200. Like, there has to be an easier way. So I asked the question, there has to be an easier way. Then I started working at a bank, my second job. And it was a eye-opening experience because as all my colleagues and all my co-workers, because I was in finance and banking for 15 years, every single person that wanted to work, they saw it as a job, and I saw it like school, because I had the opportunity every day to get paid to talk finances and financial literacy and to see a business succeed and a business fail for 15 years. So that for 15 years helped me kind of, there's obstacles here. So that gave me a map to me. It's like, you know what? I want to start a business. I just don't know what to start a business in. And I was always thinking of the big quantum leap. Oh my God, I'm going to start a big company and stuff like that. I was always trying to, knock at the door of opportunity with a hammer, with the baseball bat, even with the freaking with the cannonball, trying
whatever to get through.
Not knowing that the key to the door was under the welcome mat, which was charreria. This whole time I was trying to knock through that door, trying to find my way in. And literally, I didn't have to knock it down. I just had to go pick up the key that my grandpa and my dad instilled in me since I was a little kid. And I'm over here, 30-year-old, trying to break in. And I think that's a big lesson to any student is like, I know sometimes you just have to kind of step away and then you start seeing more because you have it so in front of you. And sometimes it's the opportunity or the dream that you want is not up there in the clouds. It's sometimes in your feet where you have to work, right?
Yeah.
And have like soreness and your hands. And I've gotten told a lot of times like, man, you got so lucky. Like, you're overnight success. I'm like, you did not see the 15 years and the 20 years of work that I put into this. And so I would say stop trying to knock the door of opportunity down and just find the key. Like
that's I'm laughing because it's I wanted to play soccer my whole life. I was pretty good. I got scholarship, played semi-pro, played college and stuff like that. But when you kind of go back to the end of it, I remember watching the stuff that they didn't know that they were teaching me. They were teaching me, right? And I'm watching them start a fire. I'm told to go start a fire, go gather wood. We're hanging out in the backyard. We're making menudo. They're barbecuing, grilling. This whole time, now I start working in restaurants, right? And that's funny. I'm like 25, 26, 27, looking at it as education, not as work. Because this is what I'm going to do. Then connecting that back with my parents. And the whole time, I want to be successful. I want to do this. I tried a t-shirt company. I tried this. I tried all kinds of shit, and then, this is the one right here. This is
always the one. The next one is always the one.
Like, really, what am I good at? So I went back, thought things over. It's my family. It's what I grew up with. It's something that was already right here the whole time. And the 20 years I spent working in restaurants, connecting that with what was already there, with that key that's under the doormat already there, and then putting them together. And then doing the right steps and doing things and focusing. I'm working hard on it.
I love it. It sounds like you're consistently a student of life, right? Whatever you're figuring out as you go. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, maybe you're in that rut of like not knowing what the next step will be or what career you're going to take. One last question, because I know a lot of people have that in their mind, is what keeps you motivated? We've been talking about family values, but as an entrepreneur, there's moments where you're just like, I just want to give up. You just said what time, but what's the maybe one tip that has gotten you day by day and after all of these years and being at success where you are, because you've gone viral. So how did that also change for you, like going viral and what that's done for your business?
I'll start with the first one, which is what has kept me motivated, ups and downs. It's always the same. When I started my company, I started with the motto because it was in there already. So it was, my family didn't come this far for me to just come this far. And that's the motto for my podcast. That's the motto for my book. And that's my motto for life. So when I feel down, it's like we're always today we're cool and tomorrow we're not. But that's always been, my family didn't come this far for me to come this far. And that's something that I will give to any student or any person that's going through a problem, relationships, anything, it doesn't matter. Like your family didn't come this far for you to just come this far.
I like that.
That's, similar thing, right? You look at, I always can think back to my grandmother, right? Angelita, I can she's over here working her.
My grandmother.
She worked till she was, until the Lord took her away from us, till the day. Even she started getting dementia and stuff, but she was still out there working in the garden, doing everything. But, I watched my father, my grandparents, my mom always be motivated for their family and to work, right? It's the same thing, right? If what's this life for? Everyone wants to have a big question. What's life about? Whatever. Well, for me, it's about my family, and it's about living and having a sense of life that we're happy and being able to connect with people and try and be happy, because you have ups and downs in business. You have ups and downs. Mm-hmm. So what's the come back at the end of the day and be happy with my family, my kids, my wife. And that little thing right there, that's what my life is about. So if I can take that and share it with people for half the day at least and be able to put my heart and soul out there and get some in return, then
it's all worth it.
That's what it's all worth it. Yeah. So then that's what keeps me motivated, right?
I love it.
Yeah. Being able to leave a legacy on for my kids. That wasn't be the first one to be able to do this in my family and then pass it on, and also to remember to teach my kids. There's this thought process I used to have where I would be like, I don't want them to work as hard as me, so I will work twice as hard because I don't want them to feel this. You know what I mean? I'm that's the wrong way to think. Yep. Because then they're not gonna be able to continue to do it. It's gonna stop with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. And what's changed for you since going viral?
As far as what would you...
all of a sudden you're being noted. I mean, you can look at your Instagram posts. You can see how people are obviously coming from near and far to come get your specific barbecue, especially in a very well-known state that everyone has good barbecue. But you're the one. So what's changed for you?
Well, I try to... What's changed is, we can almost do, I don't want to say this, it's almost like where you want to say you can almost do no wrong now, you can open up here and do that and it just happens. That's what it kind of feels like, right? Where you're wanted all the time, but then you have to remember that too, keep a straight head. That's not really, it's about, nothing's changed, as I want to say. Nothing's changed. We want to keep our head down and keep going down the path that we have laid out for us and keep staying true to that and true to what we do. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how many people see me or like me right now. I want to keep cooking good food and putting out good product and creating this family environment and having people come and have a good space to enjoy this and pushing the envelope with flavors between Texas and Mexican and even Latin and South American, and just kind of bring food to what it is, and be able to share stuff.
I like what you're saying, because it's never been about the money. But there's always those customers that always make it worth it for me. And I think you could agree. Man, stuck in the ways of the business, the routine and everything. But there's always an email for me from a customer in Alaska or in Maine or in Tennessee that doesn't have access to Charro apparel. Imagine, a big woe for me in Charro Azteca when I started the company was like, wow, there's Mexicans in Alaska. I did not know that. Like, whoa, but they are, like, we're everywhere. And then and they're having their lienzo charros in Alaska. They're having their lienzo charro, even if it's a small community. And it's like se me enchinó la piel, like, because it's so exciting to know that I'm solving a problem.
Yeah.
It's not about the money. Like, I didn't start the business like you did to make money. That's a side effect of it. But I started the business to solve a problem. So that email of that customer randomly, like, hey, thank you for existing. Like, whoa, I have never messaged Amazon or any other company like, thank you for existing.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, when I get the people that are like, hey, thank you for being in business, blessings, like that right there, I print it, I put it in a binder, because I need to see those messages from real clients across the country. Like, for you, when you get a customer coming from across the country to you to taste your food, I could just imagine, like, whoa, like, you came from over there for me.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. We have people from, they come and talk to my wife one time and said, oh, everyone knows your husband in Sweden. Like, for what?
Wow.
There's a barbecue community in Sweden,
Wow.
that talks about Texas barbecue, and these people are coming like, oh yeah, we follow all your stuff, we know you.
So we have some other student questions, and for Miguel, one of them was it intimidating for you to start a restaurant, especially in a very well-known area for barbecue?
Maybe yes and no. Okay, I answer that one with, I have that natural competing spirit. I guess I got it, if I remember earlier, just me and my dad competing with stuff. Even as a kid, he pushed me to do better. But it's like this natural competing spirit inside of me where when we were getting ready to open up, I didn't go and see like, oh, this #1 spot or that #1 barbecue. I didn't care about that. I didn't really even care about anything else. What I wanted to do was to put myself in the middle where the best barbecue was. But I didn't go and say I had to be like that person or beat that person. But I knew that Central Texas and Austin was producing some of the best barbecue around. So for me to be there, that was like, okay, this is where I need to be. I need to be around not only barbecue, but the food scene in general was being pushed in Austin. This is where I want to be. This is like, if you're going to go be a musician or whatever, what profession you're going to go to where the best is, right? So for me to be there, it was exciting. And it was something to look forward to, try and overcome. Even if there's a little bit of fear, whatever it is, that's what you face, because that's what's going to make you grow as a person, right?
Yes.
So for me, I was like, okay, yeah, I am scared, but I'm also excited about this because this is where I need to be. So for Valentina's, it was like, I'm going to do the best I can and put out brisket that can compete, or barbecue that's going to be on a level with who's around me or more. But I'm also going to look at the rice, the beans, the aguacate, the salsa, the tortillas. They have to be, to me, what my grandmother would put out.
That's the place. I like that. And one of the students, you're talking about fear, one of the questions the students had was, thinking about the fears and doubts that constantly play into you, did you find your voice, how did you find your voice basically when you started your podcast? Did you find that intimidating, being in a space where you don't really hear as many?
It's always intimidating, and it's intimidating now. Just thinking about it makes my stomach like churn. And one of the things that I have found out was that you're always going to be fearful. And you have to do two things. You have to separate your ego from yourself. And ego is that thing that's in your mind, that only lives in your mind, telling you can't do it, snooze the alarm clock, cut the corner, no one would notice. And first, it's separating yourself from that, because that ego is going to be fearful, and it's going to have hatred. It's going to always try to seduce you to its way. But the thing is, the second part to it is to make it your friend. Like, it lives inside of your mind, and the only time, and that's a daily battle that I have to have with my ego. And as soon as I wake up to the point that I fall asleep, and someone asks me, so when do you win the war if every single day is a battle? Well, you win the war when you die. That's the only time that you are going to beat the ego. And as soon as you separate yourself, that you are not afraid. Your ego's afraid. And once your ego's afraid, then you could be like, that is the right thing to do. That is where you should go. The fear of starting a business, the fear of saying hello to your future wife or to your future husband. Like, I remember that I was so nervous, but that is where you should go towards, because that inspiration is coming from somewhere above. I don't know where, but if it's inspiring you to do something, go for it. And that fear is always going to be there, but it's how can you continue making a step forward with fear, like not having fear hold you back. And I think that's where a lot of people are holding back. Like, they're thinking that they're afraid when it's not them, it's their ego inside.
I love that. Getting out of your head, basically, right? The fear that comes from it. And both of you have obviously done incredible things throughout your entire career, and obviously now with your businesses. If there's one more tip that you wish you could tell, especially with these students that have so many questions, and hopefully got through all of them as much as we could. If there's one tip that you can give these students on moving forward and not being able to think, being cynical of what today's market would be like, what is it that you want to tell them? We start with you, and then Miguel.
For me, is to always have a learning mindset, not a fixed mindset. It's never no completely. It's always a not now. Always look for the answer. There is so much information in our fingertips through YouTube, but I think we're utilizing it maybe for entertainment or for pastimes, and an hour or two, 10 hours pass by. But there's books out there, there's podcasts, there's YouTube channels. There's always a way for you to keep learning. And if something didn't work, then there's a word that my mentor says, corregir y continuar. Always correct and always continue. Correct and continue. Correct and continue. And I would say, but you cannot correct and continue if you have a fixed mindset. Oh, well, they said no. Okay, never mind. Okay, well, there's a limit. I'm Hispanic, I'm brown, I'm Latino, I'm whatever, so then that's not for me. Was born on the wrong side of the tracks. There's always a way out. There's always going to be obstacles. You continue to keep learning. And you can start with agarra el rollo y ponte las pilas.
Love it.
That's right. Well, and same thing, I mean, it's listening to yourself too. Don't be afraid. Like, when you separate your ego and everything, but you gotta listen to your gut. You gotta follow that. There's at times where you shouldn't be doing something, but you're gonna do it anyway because you're saying, like, I shouldn't be doing this. Biggest thing with your own business and entrepreneurs, like, listen to yourself, because you're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right. And always learn, but from being open to learn from anybody and everybody.
Yes.
Just because someone may not have as much education as you, or especially the people who don't have as much of an education, okay? As far as this written down, this, and this, and like a whole list.
A whole script of it, yeah.
But those are the people you can learn from the most. Like what you talk about, the story with your dad giving you the advice, right? And I learned from my son, my daughter, a 6-year-old can say something. Sometime you're like,
kids have the answer.
That's it right there. But always be willing to learn from anywhere, anyone around you, right? And absorbing it in. But my biggest thing for me that has been true through and through the whole time is listening to what is in here and not fighting it. Because your instincts are going to tell you what's right.
I know all of you are just as inspired as I am. And with that question, we're closing our session. But I want to thank our living leyendas, Francisco Galvez from Charro Azteca and Miguel Vidal from Valentina's TexMex Barbecue. And of course, our sponsors, GMC, in collaboration with the Youth Awards and Hispanic Heritage Foundation. I've been Natalie Torres-Haddad, and wishing all of you un mes feliz de la herencia hispana.